So I'm still working out of test number 5. I'm going to look at some paired reading questions. Remember, I'm right here and telling you that you can do this without doing much reading at all. Now, if you're a kid who reads really fast and you're like, dude, I can't do this without doing any reading, well then do the reading, it's fine. But what we're trying to do is find the perfect harmony for you between doing like the reading that you have to do to get as many questions correct as you can without wasting time. The way paired questions work is like this. Here's how they look. First question looks like a normal question with normal answer choices. There's your question, there's your answer. Second question has the word previous in it. You're looking for evidence to the answer to the previous question. That's where your clues come from. So you got question, answers, clues. And if you're doing the paired ones well, you're getting both of these answers correct at the same time. Okay, step 1, find a set apart word in the question. So Limery's primary impression of the party of 4 is that they, so we're looking for this guy's impression of the party of 4. And then I'd go through step 2, find a set apart word in the answer choices. Noisy, maybe refreshing or change. That's about his book, kind of, and this is about youth. Set apart words in answer choices are usually nouns, sometimes adjectives, usually not verbs. Are, resemble, represent, those all kind of usually mean the same thing as verbs in these things. But then the idea is this, y'all. You're going to these lines because one of them has to be the place that connects this question as it's phrased to this answer choice as it's phrased. Only one answer choice is correct. We're trying to get rid of them as we go. And here we go. So first I'm going to look at lines 45 to 47. I'm looking for this guy's impression of the party of 4. Noisy, refreshing, book, or youth. 45 to 47. If you find yourself caring, you're doing it wrong also. We're not here to learn. We're not here to care. We're here to yank points away from this test. The women had shingled hair and short, tight skirts, which exposed the underside of their knees when they sat down. That's the phrase here. We started with the women. We ended with sat down. Is that his impression of the party of 4? Well, some people will tell themselves like, oh yeah, that represents glamour. It said their hair was braided and they had on short skirts. Why is that not the answer then? 2 reasons. 1, it doesn't say youth. And the other is this isn't the impression of the party of 4. This is the impression of the women. You see how that would be a reason this isn't the answer. And remember, most answer choices are incorrect. We're looking for any good reason to get rid of it, not to keep it. So I'd get rid of that, and probably it means that one's not the answer also, because that's the trick or trap they're trying to walk us into. 47. One of the women had the face of a young boy, but disguised by one trick or another. You see how, because I'm keeping it literal, when it says one of the women had the face of a young boy, that might make somebody think, oh, youth. But that's not the answer because of that word right there. There's always a word that's the reason. This is about one of the women, not about the party of 4, which means this cannot be the answer. Get rid of it and keep it moving. This process, y'all, you can get better and better at it, but you have to spend time doing it for yourself. Lines 55 to 59. But it was the women's voices, the terrible, not quite sober pitch of the women's voices, which caused Limey to skim over 2 whole pages without knowing what was on them. So now, I've actually forgotten what I'm even trying to do, so I'm going to go back. The anchor for my thinking is the question. His impression of the party of 4 is that they are noisy, refreshing, book, and we got rid of that one already. I think I feel noisy in there. Voices, terrible, not sober pitch, caused him to skim over 2 whole pages without knowing what was on them. That right there says noisy. That right there says distracting. See how those fit? And if you're like, wait, that was about the women, not the party of 4. Okay, let's go back and and look at this just to make sure. Line 69 says, Limey closed the book. Well, that has nothing to do with this question, so that's not the answer, which means that fit that we just found must be the fit. That's the answer. That's how paired questions work. So you can spot them because of the way they look. Beware that sometimes they fall on two different pages. Let's see. And there are some questions that look like evidence questions that are not paired. So this is an evidence question, but it's not paired with number 8. So again, I want to go to the next next passage to show you. There's a paired one. There's the magic word. There's a paired one. There's usually 9 vocab questions on a, and then 9 paired ones. So that's 18 questions, and 9 more makes 27 out of 52. More than half of this test, y'all, is vocab and paired questions, and to get those correct does not require much reading at all. You don't get any points for reading. You get points for picking correct answers out of a list. These paired ones get you 2 right at a time if you're doing it well. So, just a repeat of how this works. Find a set apart word. Beecher makes which the status of women relative to men. That's a set apart word. We're looking for the status of women. Women depend on men. This is not necessarily the truth. We're just looking for what the text says. Women are inferior to men. Women have fewer rights than men. Women are superior to men. Now, what we're trying to do is look in these clues, these lines, to match the status of women with one of these phrases here. So let's go lines 6 through 10. But while woman holds a subordinate relation in society to the other sex, that's a woman, that's a status, that is to men. It is not because it was designed that her duties or her influence should be any the less important or all-pervading. So, woman subordinate to men is what I see right there. Status of women depend on men, maybe. Women are inferior to men. I think it says that. Fewer rights than men, maybe. Women are superior to men, no. So if this is the answer, can we get rid of this for women depend on men for their safety and security, but men are largely independent of women? Did that say that? No, what it said is women subordinate to men, and her duties aren't less important. So her duties are as important. Which one says that? That one's not about duties. Women play a role as significant as that played by men. Women have fewer responsibilities. That's not what it says. Her duties are as important. That's a match right there. Now again, if you don't believe it, go and read these for yourself, but that's the way these matches feel. It's going to be like status of women matches up with in society. Subordinate relation matches up with inferior. To the other sex matches up with relative to men. And that's how this goes. Everything has to fit together. Next one here. In passage 2, Grimke makes which point about human rights? This is a tough paired question. Talking about human rights. Something about different cultures around the world. Something about being looking at the word moral, like something about the law, recognized by law, at odds with moral responsibilities, more advanced and refined throughout history. So looking for something that connects human rights to cultures or to the law or to responsibilities, being at odds with responsibilities, or something to history. So again, we go to these lines, we're looking for human rights and one of these things. So 58 to 61. Human beings have rights. That feels relevant because they are moral beings. The rights of all men grow out of their moral nature, and as all men have the same moral nature, they essentially have the same rights. So, human rights grow out of moral nature. That does not say that in A. That looks like something to do with moral nature, and so does that. So the way this works for me in my head is like I really want A to be the answer to 18 because it's talking about human rights and it has the word moral in it. 50, for it to be the answer though, it has to say something about the law. And I don't see anything in here that's screaming law at me for this one to be the answer, B. For it to say, for C to be the answer, it's going to have to say human rights are at odds with moral responsibilities, and that's not what this says, I think. That human rights have to do with moral nature, not at odds with it. So, gosh, that's hard for me to lay off of, but I'm pretty sure that's not the answer. So I'm going to keep it moving. Still looking for something about human rights. These rights may be wrested from the slave, but they cannot be alienated. His title to himself is as perfect now as is that of Lyman Beecher. It is stamped on his moral being and is like it imperishable. Gosh, that's a lot of sentence. That's about human rights still, so that's a check. May be wrested from the slave. Gosh, that's hard for me to do that, but I think that means B is the answer. So that would be human rights, although not recognized by law, that is to say, like taken away, stolen, wrested from the slave. So rights can be taken away, but they cannot be alienated because they're stamped on his moral being and imperishable. So they retain their moral authority, stamped on his moral being. Matches with that, regardless of whether they are recognized by the law. So that's a rights matches rights, moral authority matches stamped on his moral being. Whether they're not recognized by the law, that's wrested from the slave. So that's bingo. So that's how the paired ones work. You go find a clue word in the question, find a set apart word in the answer choices, and start looking at those lines for which one matches that question with those clues. And then make sure at the end of the day that if you pick a line and you pick a thing that kind of lines up with it, that together they answer the question. People who mess up paired ones forget that their actual job is to answer the question, no matter what. If you have the perfect paired line and answer choice, it's only the answer if it answers the question. If it doesn't answer the question, it's not the answer. That is where I'll stop with that for now. Thanks.